It's teeming down with rain today, and we're walking in Bowdown, which Mark Cohen never sang. I don't know why he chose Memphis. Maybe it scanned better.
The Photowalk is brought to you by mpb.com. Quality used photo and video kit. Buy, sell, trade, create at mpb.com.
Right, first frame of the day. I'll put you in my pocket. I've got my X Pro 1 with, disaster. What's a disaster, Neil? Well, I brought out I'll have to retrace my steps. I brought out a black lens cleaner that was kind of a pouch stroke lens cleaner. I popped it on the front of my Yashica 28. Oh no, I've got my wide angle today. It's my Samyang 12mm lens to kind of protect it while I'm walking, and also act as a cloth I can use to clean the lens, because it's bound to get spots of rain on it. Oh, there it is. Oh. And it fell off the camera. About 30. Oh no, I can't use that. It's sopping. Oh. Well, there's that plan gone. You might end up with very misty looking pictures today, because without that, it's impossible to clean my lens properly between pictures. Let me get a sketchbook though. I'm in woodland. It's very lush, of course, because of all this rain today. There's wind and there's rain and there's a bleh sky. The sky is not at all inspiring, but it does bring out the greens, of course, and the mosses. Here's some interesting looking trees. I'll pop you in my pocket. And what am I going to select? So I'm on ISO 800. I think I'll need a fairly good ISO range today because it's a little bit dark. Manually focusing. Everything's manual with this. X Pro 1, my Fujifilm X Pro 1. There we go. A fairly gnarly, but it's quite nicely decorated by lots of lichen and, I don't know. That's the beauty of a sketchbook image, I suppose. Not pressurising myself too much, it just says I was here. Today, I was going to split tone my pictures. You're going to split what, Neil? You know, split tone? Oh, is it that thing in Lightroom that I've seen but I've never clicked? Yeah, there we go, that's the one, just like me. You'll hear me admit to that as well within the interview part of today's walk with my guest, Mark Littlejohn. There's a young lass at school. This, by the way, has nothing to do with the interview. I'll come back to that, bear with me. It's going to be another one of my blathers. Anyway, there's a young lass at the school where Sam teaches who seems to have learned her language skills from hours in front of the TV watching comedy and the shopping channel. For somebody who's in primary or elementary school is what I think most of the world calls it, isn't it? I have to say that her comedy timing is impeccable. About a year prior to lockdown, I've been asked by the school to fill in for Santa at the Christmas fair as the regular Santa, who fills in for the real Santa, of course. You know how this works. Anyway, the regular Santa had to go in for a hip replacement, so they were left with me, who had 2 perfectly working hips. I wasn't quite sure, though, what to think or feel about being asked to be Santa. I mean, it seemed perhaps I'd reached a point in my life where my physique and greying beard were enough to win me the part. But anyway, I've been bossing the grotto for around about an hour or so when this young lass I'm referencing here walked in. And she took one look at me, shook her head, and questioned my male grooming regime when it came to beard softening. And in terms of the word split, see, this does have a sort of tenuous connection here. In terms of that, my wife was teaching PE one day, physical education, when this young lass got the landing to the long jump wrong in the practice for school sports day, and upon landing she awkwardly screamed, "Oh God, guys, I've split me difference." Now, I don't know, was she 7? 7 years old, something like that. It does seem a very strange and comedic thing for a young lass to say. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of me saying whenever I hear the word split, I register that particular story. It resonates in an entirely comical way for me, so split toning does anyway. I'll be splitting my difference figuratively and photographically today with the pictures I make on this walk, because my guest, Mark Littlejohn, award-winning Mark Littlejohn, has made a house style of this, which is, it's admired internationally. And his story is enthralling. This former 30 years Scottish detective in the Cumbrian police force who took up photography seriously, really, in his 50s. CID one moment, admired landscape photographer the next, with some hard work in between, of course. But here's what I've been really buoyed by, and what I'm thoroughly looking forward to talking to Mark about. As a respected photographer, Mark Littlejohn is not somebody who labours over a computer, having spent the latter part of his life doing that as a forensic expert. He's also someone, mostly thanks to owning boxer dogs, probably, not of course known for their patience and stillness. He's not somebody who spends an hour or more wrangling the finer adjustments of a tripod head or wiping down filters, making his, frankly, stunning pictures of the big world that we're a small part of. He makes many of his highly commended pictures on the move. In some ways, I suppose, sketchbooking, but having trained his eye and photography technique to be, I suppose you could say, fluid, he's rather surprised by all the fuss.
Today on the Photowalk.
Well, it's weird, to be perfectly honest, because I just do my own thing, if you like. I've really enjoyed as much as anything the response to when I do the spiels on Facebook that I should just copy across on Instagram. So the response, to think that, I write articles. I mean, it's like 30,000 folk on Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's 60,000 or so on Instagram.
Stories of life told by photographers. And today we're joined as you and I walk by Mark Littlejohn. Surprised by his success, yes, maybe. And certainly loving being in the wilds of wherever. He with his camera, just making pictures. And really, that's what this show is all about. This unique and special kind of photography show. Unique because you help write it with your letters, with your thoughts, with your pictures that you share. And special because, we get to spend time together making our photos. Those letters and guests, both present and past, inspire with thoughts about photography and life. It's a show about how making pictures has you feel, what it does for us and others around us. A gentle respite, as we said last week, from the rough and tumble of the everyday. In the mailbag and on the show today, sending the gift of your art on a postcard, being inspired by poetry and books. How, and I realise we're peaking 1 week earlier than I was originally planning, how doing a 365 changed one writer/photographer's way of working altogether. The close loved ones who've inspired our picture making. We also talk about the incredible and dangerous plants we walk by. If you live in the desert, that is. The personal projects that come at us from an unexpected angle altogether. And as a bonus guest, Johan Otterdal Edfeldt suggests making pictures for a whole year with one camera and one lens. Nearly 7 billion people on this planet are able to make a photograph with something and record life. So we're not walking alone, documenting our place and time in this world. Coffee, Garibaldi's walking boots and thorn-proof trousers. On? Check. Well, let's walk then. Extra milers will know that I started the year. You know what last year ended like. It was all the sort of the white goods of our house, like the dishwasher, and the computers, of course, the brains, as I call them in the office, all gradually failed on me. And look, the latest thing to start the year, as a gift for New Year 2023, my phone packed up. And of course the phone is the brain of the Photowalk in many respects, it being what I record audio into. And I know that surprises a lot of people. I don't step out with these, I do have them, these fancy, beautiful Sennheiser shotgun microphones. I use the lowly phone or the lowly smartphone. And so I've come out with a a new phone to start the year. I gave it a test run for the Extra Mile show, which we'll talk about later on, and it seemed to be okay. So here we are. New microphone for a new year. Letters. Let's start with Harriet Goldsmith. Thank you for your note. Neil, Happy New Year. I assume we're allowed to say that until at least February. I think you can, can't you? On the subject of New Year resolutions, that's me, my husband Graham, the two slightly more grown-up children, 24 and 32, and our chocolate lab Benson, all made resolutions, and only one of us managed to keep them a handful of days into the new year. To be honest, I'm not sure what Benson's was, he being a dog and all, but he looks pretty pleased with himself, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on this one, that he's the only one that's kept the resolution. You said you were keen to hear from those who've never contacted the show before, so here I am. And next time I'll pluck up the courage to share some pictures too, mostly of the Norfolk Broads, where you should hold a photographic retreat. It's beautiful and flat for walks. Mostly. Bring Sir Barkalot. Benson will put him in his place. Barkalot's not with us today. It's raining a lot. He did come out for the Extra Mile walk, but today, it being a fairly vicious day with rain and wind, although at the moment I don't suppose you can hear it. It's sort of quietened down. It has. I think we've walked into a microclimate for this part of the walk. I shall remain within it. But no, Sir Barkalot's at his girlfriend's today. It's beautiful and flat for walks mostly. Bring Sir Barkalot. Benson will put him in his place, yes. Since it's become a request show for guests, it does seem like that of late, doesn't it, Harriet? I'd like to throw my suggestion in, if I may. Harry behind the lens, who's made some beautiful photographs of the places I'm lucky to see on my walks every single day. All the best from Harriet. Harry behind the lens. Well, I looked him up, and you're right. Extraordinary work, some striking long exposures as well. So thank you for the tip-off. I shall look at a little bit more of his work and drop him a line. And as for you sending pictures in, come on. I want to see the Norfolk Broads through your lens. And remember, when you're sending pictures in, they don't have to be absolute award winners. Not that they wouldn't be, Harriet, but they can be, well, like mine, simple sketchbookers that just show where you were in the world, where you are in the world, more appropriately. And one from Mark Krashnak. Greetings, Neil, from New Jersey land, USA. Hope the new year is finding you and yours, especially Sir Barkalot, doing well. Yes, we are, actually. Barnes is okay. And our Extra Mile show that he did walk with me on this week, he chased some geese, barked to the ducks, and almost had a set to with a very large alpha swan. He's displaying, I think, Mark, some teenage tendencies right now, but since the day is rain, and more rain, and a bit more rain, just a little bit more rain on top of that, I thought a day with his girlfriend would be far more enjoyable for him. Anyway, says Mark, just wanted to drop a note as a few things the past episodes caught my ear, and I thought I'd share. First, back on episode, says Mark, I can't find it, but the photographer you interviewed talked about having a newborn, I believe, and was looking to document this part of his life. Yeah, I think it was the letter that we talked about when I was suggesting making sure that he audio recorded the new little one in his life. Was that the episode? I think it might have been. Anyway, after that one, I meant to email you then, but my reply now ties into the latest episode where you talked about Tim Booth's A Show of Hands project. Now, A Show of Hands, if you didn't hear last week's programme, was all about this extraordinary project that Tim, and I have written to Tim, I haven't heard back just yet, but Tim made this beautiful project of people's hands, portraits of people's hands, and it all started with his grandmother's hands. Now, waxed very, very lyrical about it last week, so I'll not do it again. But it's just a beautiful project, and it was one of those, as I suggested, one of those projects where you think, why did I not think of that idea? There's no reason why you can't go and photograph hands. Tim won't be the first to have done it, but his project is gorgeous. There's no doubt about that. The book from it is what I'd like to talk to him about on the programme at some stage. I seem to have come across an area where it can't get through. It has rained a lot. This puddle has turned into a pond, possibly a river. Let's try and get... the water's quite... it's gone over the laces. Wet socks. We've only just started. But yes, it was. You're right to have identified that project. It's beautiful. I once had a project that's sort of, says Mark, combined the two. Back in 2007, after my daughter, Olivia, was born, I was just getting into photography. So I was snapping away with all the usual new baby snaps. But then once she was a year or two old and started to develop a bit more of a personality, a new project presented itself. I was shooting a still life of red grapes on a white plate on a low table, and she was playing nearby watching Dad, and as I was trying to find the right exposure, she reached in to grab a grape that I was photographing just as I clicked the shutter. And I liked the photo of the little fingers in the frame more than just the boring still life I was shooting, and so my Little Fingers Gallery Series project was born. I'd go on over the next few years to shoot 30 more images to add to my Little Fingers gallery. Everything from Liv's hands with a marker or a chicken nugget. Do they have them where you are? Yes, of course we have chicken nuggets. Or fingers on a tree stump, or fingers on a doorknob, that kind of thing. I ended the project 10 years later, and you can see the set here. I'll leave a link, actually, and pop some on the show page as well. My next goal, says Mark, is to put all of these into a small book to give to my daughter and one to keep myself. Now that, Mark, that is... that's going to be a true life gift, isn't it? A very unique life gift. I mean, you made it, so it's even more special. It's a legacy piece, just perfect. And just like Tim's project, where he discovered the portrait project of the hands, by making a photograph of his grandmother's hands, you've done a similar thing, haven't you? You found a project quite by accident, and it's turned out to be something that's going to be a precious gift for your daughter. On episode 363, you also talked about the 365 project. Well, back in 2007, I took on the daunting 365. I was so new to photography, so green to it all, that I really didn't expect to see the significance of it for me. But I remember being very excited to start with. I was snapping away, taking loads and loads of frankly lousy images, very basic. Sometimes I had to snap something just to fulfill the requirement and post to my Flickr page. At some point, I did, though, start to hate the project. It was like a heavy rock around my neck, weighing me down, but I kept going on. And in the end, I learned to like it, and I came out the other side. While the images I was making weren't necessarily gallery-worthy, they did, in fact, improve, and I started to see photos before I was shooting them. My mind framed them up before my camera snapped them, and I got better that way. And I feel that project helped me along my photography path, which I've continued and now count quite a few book cover and album covers under my belt, or camera strap, says Mark. Now I take photos every day, especially on my morning rambles in central New Jersey, and I don't think twice. While I still wouldn't want to officially commit to a 365 project again, he shudders, it can be very beneficial. So if you're thinking about doing one, I think Mark has certainly proved there that it can be something that really drives your photography, that really sort of inspires your eye. Can you inspire? Yes, you can inspire your eye. Also, you've asked for photos as to where we all walk. Well, here in New Jersey, I live near 2 nature centres. One's within walking distance, and it's about 2.5 miles long, and I've been doing this loop nearly every day since late November 2021. It's been interesting to walk through all 4 seasons and still find different things to photograph every day. With my phone camera, mostly. One of the photos from last winter, a picnic table in a grove of trees, which I often shoot, even made it onto my holiday card this year. The other part of the walk winds alongside some electric power lines, which always stand stately in bright sun and morning fog, another element I often shoot. And attached are a couple of photographs of this route, one including my 2 dogs, Quinn Lavalette and Bojangles Hawthorne Caruso, as they enjoy that walk as well. My word, they sound very posh, your dogs. They've got pedigree names. The other nature centre is a short drive away, but provides me with a babbling brook and various boardwalks along the way. Finally, says Mark, you've worked hard on this letter. I'm impressed. You mentioned Philip Larkin and poetry being inspirational. It was I tell you what, Mark, it was the photographer Nils Jorgensen that mentioned him. He said that Larkin was like I'm paraphrasing now, probably very badly, but Larkin was like a street photographer in some respects, in the way that he observed life for the lightness and the darkness. Very honest poetry of Larkin. Mark says, well, the last time I was at the library, I took out the collected works of Philip Larkin, and while I love to read, I must say, it's usually fiction, I must say I'm really enjoying Larkin's poetry. I've dog-eared, sorry to bark a lot, so many pages of this library copy, I feel I should probably buy them a new one and just keep this one. So thank you for the new literary path and inspiration. Take care as we go into 2023, from Mark. Now, Mark, thank you, first of all, so much for your wonderful letter. And I feel, with your help, I've peaked early with this. I was going to really mention the 365 projects and offer up advice on next week's episode, which is episode, and the reason for doing this, it's episode 365. So you may need to help me out here, please, dear other listeners, because Mark's mail was very inspiring for you to set out on a 365, where you make a picture every single day and post it on something like Flickr, or set up an Instagram especially for that project. So if you can send me your advice, how you made your 365, the high points, the low points, and a link, if you've still got a link to, maybe it's one that you've started for a new year, a link please, so that I can link through to them on the show and promote them as well, then I'd love to hear from you. Stories at photowalk.show is the email address, stories at photowalk.show. But you mentioned that you're finding inspiration in poetry, Mark. Now, next week's guest is Alice Tomlinson, who makes these extraordinary long-tail photography projects. She is a Taylor Wessing winner, and author of the most beautiful books, photographer of the most thought-provoking personal projects. And she talked to me in part of our conversation. We really do wind around an awful lot of subjects in our chat next week. She talked to me about how words and books and poetry all feeds into her inspiration when she's making pictures. And so, ahead of next week, and because it fits very well with your letter, Mark, here's Alice talking about her literary inspiration.
I was a voracious reader when I was younger, and I still read now, not as much as I would like.
Well, I can see all the books next to you.
Yes, and just that idea of immersing yourself in someone else's world and in someone else's imagination and in storytelling, I think that really stuck with me. So I wasn't actually particularly arty when I was a child. Like, I didn't do art. I didn't even do art GCSE. I never really thought myself as creative in a kind of conventional way. Right. But I think my mind acted in a kind of creative way in some ways, and I was always forming stories in my head. And for me, the best way of expressing that was through photography. Alice
Tomlinson is my guest next week. Now, This is fantastic. I love it when woodland forests, all those walks that we make in nature, they throw up sometimes really intriguing surprises, don't they? And Bowdown Woods, I've walked through here before, and I think I may have mentioned this before, but it will be a while back now. It used to be part of, it was something to do with the military. And so sometimes you find these mounds, which I believe were to store munitions during World War II. And this looks like, so I'm not sure, this could well be what I'm standing next to now, might be military, but equally, because I'm on a very flat road here within the woods, I think that this might once upon a time have been a railway platform. It's completely been taken over now by trees, and roots and brambles and bushes and things pushing up through what would have been the platform. But this looks like the height of a railway platform. Whether it was military or whether it's part of, we had some cuts, railway cuts, in the late 50s and the 60s by a man called Beeching. He was he a minister or was he an advisor to the government? Anyway, from his reports, a lot of railways, regional and rural routes were taken out as the car took over in the country. Let me now, where am I going to put my letters down so they don't get absolutely sopping wet? Just there. Let me get a picture. So, I've managed to keep the lens reasonably dry, surprisingly. I'm going to slow my shutter speed down to a 60th. I'm hand holding f5.6. I'm in focus. It's manual focus. I'm using the visual peaking method within the camera. White peaking on. Let's get a picture of this. Sort of a vanishing point picture in some respects of this platform. There we go. There's one frame. That's just been, I suppose, consumed by the vegetation, by the wildlife, by the trees. Super. There we go. Another sketchbook image. So, Alice will be on the show next week. Thoroughly looking forward to talking with her. And while we're talking about poetry and literature, there's a poem by Rudyard Kipling that I often listen to. It's called, I suppose if I had a favourite poem, this might well be it. It's called If. It's a very famous, well-known poem, and I was trying to find a copyright-free version to play to follow Alice, to sort of have two bits of inspirational audio there, but sadly I couldn't. I found plenty of renditions of it, of readings of it, and I did find a film by an actor called Gabriella Costadinova, and it's unusual to hear this poem being read by a woman. You hear it read often by actors like Anthony Hopkins, but this version by Gabriella, I think, it's beautiful. It's summed up by one of the comments I read below in the film where it appears on YouTube. A very simple, beautiful cinematic film it is in black and white. And there was a comment that said something about this poem being recited by a woman is absolutely chilling, like the words of a mother to her son. And this is now my favourite version, and I think it's actually mine too now. I've popped it on the show page today. There's lots of photographs on the show page today. And there's, as always, we put some films on there as well. At the moment, I've put one film on there. I'll probably find some more later on when I'm mixing the show. But Gabriella's film of this poem, If, by Kipling, is on there. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful reading of it. But just returning to the 365 thing, having peaked early. Neil, why couldn't you wait? I don't know. I couldn't help myself. But next week, yes, it's episode 365. Many 365 features where photographers, amateur, professional or otherwise, make pictures. Many of these start on Jan 1st because it's that line, isn't it? It's that figurative, actual line at the start of a year where you think, right, I'm starting something new like resolutions or 365s. But it doesn't have to be that way. And episode 365 is next week, and I don't know, it'd be fantastic to follow your 365. So if you so decide to make a 365 from episode 365, well, number one, I would be I'd feel very flattered. And number two, I'd certainly like to share the pictures as you make your way, as you traverse your way through the year, and to follow your photographic journey. That's that J word again. I can't find another word. I know journey is so overused, but I can't find another word to replace it, really. Now, Mike Miller, on the subject of 365s, he wrote us a photo essay, which is on the website, about making a 365. I'll link to it on the show page today, but it's easy enough to find on the photo features tab on the website as well. He gives some practical advice about storage and then creative thoughts on enthusing yourself to make and post a picture a day, because it's when you start to, I think, when you think about making pictures every day as perhaps, well, not the greatest challenge, it actually is, and it becomes, as was suggested by our other Mike in that letter a moment ago, it becomes a sort of a weight on your shoulders, doesn't it? I haven't posted today. It's like 11:59, and you think, 11:59 of the PM, that is. You think, I've got to go and post a picture quick. It becomes somewhat of a challenge, and Mike Miller was suggesting that you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and accept that you may have a few days off. So maybe give yourself 5 or 7 days. Can't remember. Was it 5 that Mike suggested? I think 5. But there's some grand tips on there. But I would like yours as well. I'd like to know if you're about to embark on one, or if you have one already, then write me, please. Stories, as they say. Stories at photowalk.show. Right. Time for the first part of my conversation with Mark Littlejohn, who I have to thank various extra mileys for, actually, even a guest. It was Bill Ward who suggested Mark as well. Though I've seen Mark's work for a little while. So there's a list of folk I need to thank. Mally Davis, Man of the Trees, definitely suggested him. Extra miler and retreat boss, Lynn Fraser, definitely suggested him. Bill Ward, as I say, definitely suggested him. And I'm pretty sure Paul Sanders, who champions the quiet nature of what we do, I'm pretty sure that he mentioned him as well to me. It seems, and if you did as well, and you're saying, what about me, Neil? What about me? And you too. There we go. But he seems, Mark Littlejohn this is, to have established quite a fan base. Though, as you're about to learn, or perhaps feel from our conversation, it's really not something Mark strived to achieve, the fan base that is, or indeed ever intended or expected. And I really do love that you can come to photography at whatever stage in your life. I often think this is not really a photography show. This is a program where we just happen to have cameras and go and make pictures. And making those pictures is a great solace to so many people. And so you can come to photography at whatever stage in your life, with whatever experience, and make a wonderful impression. So this is Mark Littlejohn, part 1. Mark, a retired detective and forensics analyst, you came to photography formally when you laid down the warrant card as such, or is there an overlap? I know you didn't really buy your first big camera till 2010, but prior to that, was there photography in your life?
No, funnily enough, it's something I wanted to do. It was one of those little itches that never managed to get scratched. And then, I suppose, wife, work, kids, or work, wife, kids, trying to work out an order. But it got in the way. I did buy a nice camera in about 85, but I went into CID about 2 weeks later in the era of ashes to ashes. So about 2 weeks after I bought this rather nice Pentax Semi Super, I went into CID, young, single man, and all you did was work, go to the pub, sleep for a short while, and then repeat the process. So the camera never got used. I think I put one roll of film through it, and then it eventually got traded. But then fast forward towards the end of my time in the CID, I became a computer forensic analyst, which was 95% of the job was examining paedophiles' computers, which you might imagine wasn't the most pleasant of tasks.
No, not at all.
Was quite stressful. So you'd be working 60-hour weeks every week. You'd be going in on a Saturday, going in on a Sunday. Got quite stressed with it, to the extent, my wife would wake up at 3 a.m. and wonder where I was, and I would be down the A&E, hooked up to ECGs because I was convinced I was having a heart attack or whatever else. But I wasn't going to quit because of the stress. It was just a case of trying to work out a way of minimising the stress. just allowed me to carry on. And so I started walking more. In those days, I worked at Penrith, the police headquarters for Cumbria, and we were 5 miles from Ullswater, 5 miles from Eden Valley. And the walks through the winter of 2009, 2010, trying to get the exercise to de-stress, were fantastic. I don't know if you can remember the winter of early 2010 was just glorious. And the scenery was so magical that one day in January, I thought, I need to buy a camera. And that was it. Little did I realise it would be a passion that had been waiting nearly 5 decades to be realised.
Ullswater, is that the I know there's many bodies of water in the lakes, clearly, but is that the lake where the RAF fly across low?
They fly across there extremely low. The RAF operate a one-way system through the lake. So they'll come up through Thirlmere. So they come up through that body of water, and then they'll hang a right over the back of Helvellyn, or the side of Helvellyn, if you like, come over Kirkson Pass, and then blast up over Ullswater.
I was in the lakes only a couple of months ago, actually, and a friend of mine that I was meeting there said, let's go to High Street. At the time I was thinking High Street. I thought, all right, is there a Costa there or something? We'll meet up High Street, have a little walk. And no, he meant is it 800 metres high Street?
It's 2,718 feet high.
It's certainly not the High Street that I was thinking of. Between the police and between photography, there is a period of time where I think you were piloting some of the steamers as well, weren't you?
I never piloted the boats. I was never interested in that. I took it when I retired. So I bought the camera in 2010, retired towards the end of 2011, took 2012 off, just to sort of like recharge and whatever else, decide what I want to do. And I had a pal who worked on the boats purely and simply summer season. He was a retired detective chief inspector. So for 2013, I went down to the boats. And I was quite fortunate because of the photography and whatever. They liked to keep me on the boat. A lot of new starters would be working in the shop making coffees and things, but I was always on the boat. And I stayed on the boats for a number of years. Obviously, there was the opportunity to learn how to drive, but that would have meant I couldn't take photographs. And eventually, I became senior crew. They've got one member of crew who's senior crew who does the training and whatever. And actually, the reason for becoming senior crew, I suppose, to being seasonal, was my wife had a bad accident in 2017. I was starting to do workshops then. I was starting to do photography more full-time. But after her accident, I decided it would be a better idea just to have a more stable sort of home life while she recovered. And so I just kept on with the boats.
What took you from the Lake District? I know where you live now isn't too bad either, but leaving the lakes to go back to your motherland as such, was that a difficult decision or really very easy?
It'd be nice to think there was actually some thought behind it, but the reality was we'd actually sold our house at the point when Rach had her accident back in 2017, and the advice from the consultant, because it was a traumatic brain injury, they said, don't move. So we're a week away from exchanging contracts, so we didn't. So fast forward on 3 years from there, with the pandemic and places changing, we decided, let's come on, we'll see if we can sell the house again. The kids are finishing at university. So we put the house in the market and it sold in about an hour, which of course was quite nice from one respect. We did a little jig in the kitchen when we got a phone call to say, yep, those people who came and viewed wanted to buy it. So we did a little jig and then suddenly thought, bugger, where are we going? And the house that we're in now was actually owned by another landscape photographer, and I'd seen it for sale when I was coming by on a workshop a few months before. Came up, viewed the house. You're 150 yards from the beach with views of Skye, Rona, Harris, Lewis. You can see the first light hitting Sleoch if we walk down the road in the other direction. I
mean, you go out your front door and you probably think, don't mind if I do, whichever direction you point. The work, the maturity of your pictures doesn't look like the work of somebody who first picked up the camera in 2010. Looking at your work now, though, Mark, technically it will have changed. Of course it will have done, because you learn tricks as you go along. But how have you stylistically changed?
Hard question to answer. It's not something I've ever thought about. I think style is something that comes to you as opposed to the other way around. When people ask about it, I always say it's about photographing the things you love. And obviously as you grow, as you change, as you move locations, you see different things. So in some respects, the love changes. It might be that you don't go as high in the hills as you used to do. You might photograph things that are lower down. So the style's never been something that I've sought to change. I have little phrases in my head, one of which is see with the heart and shoot with the head. So I don't try and think about things overly much. If I see something that makes me shout and swear or just makes me softly sigh, then that's what I photograph. Obviously, at that point, you've got to think about how are you going to photograph it, but I never really think about techniques, styles, how I'm going to do things. Most of what I do comes very naturally. I don't try and change it by overthinking things. I think that there's a real danger an awful lot of people can overthink things.
Yeah.
And I'd rather keep it simple and keep it all to the emotions as opposed to cold-hearted theorising about what's best.
I spent a lot of time when I changed career going from broadcasting into photography, feeling somewhat a visitor. But 30 years in the police, you spent 3 decades with the force, and now just a shade over a decade as a photographer. Do you now title yourself as a photographer? Are you Mark Littlejohn Photographer?
The weird thing is I never thought of myself as a policeman either.
Oh, really?
And I only thought about catching bad guys. I mean, I didn't really say I was a detective either. I mean, okay, if somebody asked my occupation now, I'd say photographer, but I don't really think of it too much in those terms. I don't sort of like label myself, this is what I am, this is what I do.
We talk so much on this show about headspace, Mark, and how precious photography can be in this this endeavour of finding the quiet in our minds. Describe the effect for you. I mean, you've described where you live, because I know if I just asked the question in a linear fashion, you'd say, yeah, I found the quiet. But describe to me what it feels like when you go out with your camera in this extraordinary place where you live.
I don't treat it any differently from where I was when I was in the lakes, if I went to the Eden Valley or whatever else. Because I have a camera with me every day, I don't feel any pressure to take pictures. So as a photographer, in some respects, if you think of yourself as a photographer, then that's a case of you're thinking about results, you're thinking about taking pictures. I don't think about that because I go out and I enjoy myself. I enjoy being where I am. It's a case of, if you've ever watched Friends,
yeah,
and there was a character in it called Parker, only in it briefly, going out with Phoebe, and he was excited by everything. And it was, oh, isn't this the best room you've ever been? Isn't this the nicest car? Isn't this the greatest chair? And my family think of me as Parker because we go out and it's like, oh, would you look at that light? Wow, isn't that amazing? Oh, God, look at it. And it can be something that we've seen every day, but you know what it's like? The world changes every minute of every day. And I just smile. I just have a nice time. I don't think it's just my head is constantly whirring around thinking, oh, isn't that lovely? But I think if you go out just thinking only of the results, you don't see that beauty as easily.
Yeah.
And I think it's just absolutely relaxing into it and just enjoying it and feeling it. I mean, the emotional connection with the land's got to be there. If you don't feel emotion for your subject, then anybody viewing your work isn't going to feel emotion. That's my thinking.
I suspect you're not too hard on yourself then. I speak to plenty of photographers who are exceptionally hard on themselves. Everything has to be...
I'm really hard on myself.
Oh, you are hard?
Oh, Chris, yeah.
Oh, well, I was thinking that there's a sort of... there's two sides to you then. There's definitely a Jekyll and Hyde here, because you seem to me somebody who would quite happily go out, make some pictures. If you come back, you haven't got a keeper, no worries. I'll go out tomorrow and may get it tomorrow.
I'm fine with that. I think it's very dangerous to put pressure on yourself to always get results. I am very hard on myself because I think, could have done better with that. You know, it's like sometimes you have the most wondrous day with a camera and you look at your images and they don't match up to your expectations, primarily because you've had such a wonderful day. It raises your expectations. So in those sort of scenarios, sometimes I come back and look and I think, so, yeah, I think you've got to be self-critical, though. If you're not self-critical, then you're not going to evolve, if you like. You might get danger of getting stuck in a rut. I hate to use the phrase getting better or worse because I don't like that type of thinking when it comes to photography. It's a case of always putting, you only have to please one person.
So do you listen to the noise? I mean, I know we're going to talk about it shortly, but social media is where you spend most of your time hanging out when you're online. You don't have a latest website as such, but we'll come to that. But of course, you're in that sort of, well, you're in that realm where people have plenty to say about photographs. But I know, and I've heard you say that you only do it to please yourself. So do you listen to others and what they say?
No. I don't really. It could be because I'm older, grumpier, been around the block a few times, did 26 years in the CID. It's not a case of I love my own voice. It's a case of, I had this discussion, I think, when was it may have been with Bill Ward. We did a thing with Margaret Soroya up at Drumnadrocket.
Yeah, and in fact, he asked to pass his good wishes on to you.
He's a lovely fella.
He is, definitely.
Twinkly-eyed, dimpled, git.
Devilishly good looking. I hated him the moment I met him.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a funny sort of a thing. It's not a case of I don't want to be influenced by anybody else, or I want to keep my own voice pure, if you like, but it's not really what I'm about. I like doing my own thing. It's not that I'm egotistical or I'm never going to be the best photographer in the world, but then again, I don't like to quantify these things anyway. But I just like doing my own thing. I like to find out my own way. I think, I look at other people and I love the way that the likes of Valda Bailey go about her work. Really original, beautiful voice. But I just see myself as, I'm lucky enough that I think I've probably got a decent eye, but I'm very lucky in that I've always been somewhere beautiful.
Slightly left field, but Simon Baxter, who's also been on this show, has good old Meg the Labradoodle. Yeah. And I think Simon said she's as much a part of his life as photography is, as anything, really. Dogs have been a feature of your walks, of course. You mentioned that right at the start. You have a boxer now. But I was thinking, actually, I know what my dog's like. Barney doesn't give me more than a few seconds to take a picture. And a boxer is even more bonkers than a cockapoo.
Oh, completely. I mean, my first boxer was Harvey, and he'd complain. He'd sit there and just like sulk. Red, who's the current boxer, is slightly more forgiving. Yeah. We did have a Barney as well, but he unfortunately had cancer. He died at age 4. Oh. But he would just sit patiently. And Red, who was the same age, would be like, why do we stop? Because he was a properly hyperactive boxer. But I mean, dogs are great for getting you out the house. Living where we are here, when I finish this chat, it's low tide at about 2:30, so we're going to go down to Red Point and we'll just walk on the beach at Red Point. So you go out, and I have a little Nikon with a do-it-all lens. I put that in a little bag that I sling over my shoulder like a bandolero. Yeah. The dog gets me out of the house, and sometimes some of my favourite shots have been, I'll just walk the dog.
What's happened to that bag load of primes then that you take around with you everywhere?
Oh, that's downstairs.
Oh, you still have it then? Okay.
I still have. I don't have as many as I used to, but I'm down to probably about 18 or 19 primes.
When you're out, I think you may have answered this in some respects, but what makes a sort of a championed scene for you? I know you say that you point and shoot, but what's the sort of picture that sings to you where you think, oh, now I can see this on a wall? Or is it really not that thought about?
It's not that thought about.
Right.
I think if you start going out with preconceived ideas, it starts to maybe interfere with the way that you look or the way that you see or how much that you see. I hosted one of the on landscape conferences for Tim. One of my bits was interviewing Sandra Bartoka after she gave a talk. Yeah. And we were discussing photography, and we talked about, landscape photography, and we both agreed on the phrase outdoor photography, because I don't think about what I'm going to photograph, because it could be anything.
Well, it is. I mean, I've seen your animal pictures. That's outdoor, isn't it?
It can be just about anything. It's just whatever you see when you're out, in that fleeting moment, it's like, bang. So there's never anything, it's not going to be like I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot sole trees. I did think that when I came up here, I would be shooting Scots pines as they grow beside a stream meandering down the side of a rocky slope. And really, not so much. I've done a variety of other things. I've photographed reeds, I've photographed bits of beaches.
Yeah, I saw actually, I think it was just prior to Christmas, there was a kind of on Twitter, there was a small study of just the shapes that the sea leaves in the sand as it goes back out.
Right, just absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And some of them won't be a picture you'd put on your wall, but not every shot can go on your wall.
Yeah. Why do you prefer the handheld fluid way of working? I know that I think red might be a slight answer to this, but it's definitely, for you, you don't like taking out a tripod. You're not somebody who anchors themselves to the ground and spends hours looking at the same subject, are you?
I think my wife would probably say that I'd be the sort of person who was scared of missing something.
Right.
The truth of the matter is that's how I learned my photography. If you think that in February 2013, I'd been doing it for about 2 years, when I started on the boats, and when you're on the boat, you're sailing up and down. You've got no foreground. The boat's constantly moving. You've got to be fluid. You've got to just pick up the camera, take a shot and put it away again. Yeah. So I suppose that, as much as anything, influenced a move to shooting with something like a 70-200, no tripod, no filters. Camera's almost always set up for just pull it out, take a very quick shot. Everything, the settings are all fairly already dialed in. And I think it's just little tiny moments. It's just little pieces. I mean, other people could perhaps go to Elgol, sort out the composition, set up the camera, put the dry bag on it, and then wait for 2 or 3 hours for the shot to appear. I can't do that. I'm not patient enough. I'd have to be like wandering around, having a look. And I think that's more of a challenge. I don't think of it as in terms of setting up a composition. It's scenes I photograph.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think there's a danger with a tripod. You start to think, well, I'm going to get this as a leading line. I'm going to put that on the rule of thirds. I'm going to do this. And I tend to photograph scenes. I don't tend to think about a manufactured photograph in that respect. It's just seeing something that tugs at the heartstrings at that instant, and you capture it.
We talk, I certainly talk a lot about sketchbooking, which makes it sound like it's a snap, and I hope it never ever sounds like that. But this seems to me, Mark, a sort of sketchbooking approach, that you daren't miss anything. So you're going to sketchbook it, move on, and get the next one.
Basically, yeah. And they are snaps. I mean, I don't think a snap's a bad way of describing it.
I always wince when I say the word snaps. I don't know why.
I know. I use it a bit, but I don't mean it in a derogatory sense. It's you're snapping an instant in time. You're freeze framing that for eternity, and you're moving on to the next moment.
Could you use a plate camera? Have you ever taken a plate camera?
God,
no. I'm never going to find you in Scotland with a plate camera, am I?
I wouldn't mind trying it. It's the fact of what you do after you've taken the shot.
That's Mark Littlejohn, and he'll return for part 2 shortly. This is lovely as I walk in the woods here, Bowdown Woods today. That's where I am on my photo walk, making pictures with you. I'll step a bit more into the woods here. It's lovely that there's lots of birds singing today. Often in the winter, they sort of hunker down, hide away a bit, or fly off to Spain. But can you hear that? They'll stop now. It is alive with bird life. Beautiful. Love to hear the birds. Where shall I go? Let's just head a bit more. Ooh, it's fenced off here. Is that... yeah, it's fenced off. I can't go that way. All right, back the other way. Get off my land. Will be chasing me. I saw a film recently where that ended very badly for the protagonist. One of those late night B movies that I like watching. You know me while I'm doing my editing. Right, thank you to our extra milers, our patrons who walk and go the extra photo walk mile to support this show with a modest monthly or annual donation. Think of it like we make a couple of trips to the coffee house that is my dream to one day open. The other day, actually, Sam said, I'd like to have a coffee house. I thought, ding, here we go. The coffee house in my mind called Black and White. Oh, I can see what you're doing there, Neil. Would it have a photographic gallery? Oh, you bet it would. Would they be black and white pictures mainly? Oh, yeah, you're reading my mind. But yes, think of it like we're sat in the black and white gallery, admiring some beautiful pictures by Mark Littlejohn, of course, and his black and whites, clearly. Oh, hang on. Walking through the mud here. You might have to come and get me out. Have you got a 4-wheel drive? Think of us like we're sitting in the black and white gallery, you and I, or the black and white, rather, coffee house, looking at some pictures from Mark. And I buy you the first coffee. I say, go on, I'll get the first one. And you're saying, no, Neil, I'll get these ones. No, go on, sit down. Let me go and get them. I get the first, and then you get the second. And we meet up each month, and we do the same thing. Think of it like that. Not as a subscription, but as a coffee for the entertainment. Oh, look, over there. Was that a deer? I've got the wrong lens today for that. But think of it like that, and every single week there is another show. Because you go the extra mile to support the show, it's all about walking, isn't it? That's what the miles are about. I go the extra mile and make you a special show each week. And we have a new extra mile style for 2023 with a few features. The books are coming back. I've decided to revisit the bookcase. There's a lot of books to go through, so the books are coming back. Also, we hear extra bits from our guests. Last week, of course, was Ruben Radding on the show, the street photographer, and he talked to us a little bit more after the interview aboutness, if that makes sense.
On this week's Extra Mile,
Cartier-Bresson's photo of the man jumping the puddle behind the train station.
Yeah.
What's that about? If anything, it's about photography.
And then in a feature called Shooting the Breeze, photographic term. Shooting the breeze, shooting is the photographic phrase, and shooting the breeze, of course, conversation. In Shooting the Breeze, I talked to Jeffrey Sidoris, the arts podcaster, in a feature where we talk candidly about a number of subjects, actually, including the wonder of finding a creative soulmate.
When you find someone like that, whether it's a podcast co-host or a friend or a partner, whatever it is, that you can just have a conversation with, and it sort of stops time. What a gift that is.
But who is that person? You can find out in the Extra Mile episode 19, which is out now. You can become an Extra Miler by clicking on the support the show icon, which is on the front of the website, photowalk.show. So nice and easy to find. The orange button just over there. Yeah, you can see it. Top right-hand corner. That's the one. And I had a pen and paper letter this week from one of our Extra Milers, Dennis Linden, which is always a joy, particularly when it comes from overseas as well. Well, overseas to me, not necessarily to you. In Extra Mile episode 16, which was called Snore It Like Beckham and a Postcard. Intrigued? You will have heard Darren Hayton talking about his postcard project, where he's making photographs and then printing them as postcards and then sending them to people as a surprise, often with these handmade, these absolutely beautiful hand-bound booklets, floral studies and that sort of thing. They're absolutely just outstanding. I'm so proud, so happy to have one myself that he sent over. But it seems a few of you are doing similar kinds of things, and it was a joy to get Dennis Linden's from Americaland, 2 postcards, one from a rainy walk on Vancouver Island and the other in Oregon. I think Oregon's your home, isn't it? Have I got that wrong? I apologise if I have. It's a postcard of, it's a returning to school scene, really. A bike rack, or it could have been a bike wreck, actually. Post long winter, as it's now known, and it's really enthused me to perhaps have a go at doing this myself, printing postcards and just sending them as a complete surprise to people. Or the other idea that we discussed was leaving these postcards, these pictures, these gifts, these artistic gifts, just leaving them in places for people to enjoy, such as a bookshop, or as a really nice kind of a bookmark, I suppose. What a gift that would be. Oh, look, what's this? Dennis Linden's postcard. Oh, beautiful. Don't mind if I do. Or I don't know. There's all sorts of places you could leave them in. The black and white coffee shop will be one. Dennis, if I open it, I'll happily stock your postcards for you. So it was a wonderful idea, and thank you for the letter that you sent, which came from Oregon on Christmas Eve, and it reached me last week, which, by the way, tried to sideswerve politics, but probably not doing a great job. Beat the cards that our boy's grandma sent at the start of December. She sent it 5th of December. She's just across town, no more than, 7 miles, maybe less, actually. And she sent them so they could have some cards to open on, for Christmas. Because it's nice to have something sent like that, good old-fashioned analogue Christmas cards. She sent them across town, and they never arrived in time for Christmas. And when did they arrive? 7th of Jan. Yes. So I think, am I right in saying that your postcards from Oregon actually arrived before the ones that the cards that Grandma sent to the boys? Oh, anyway, Grandma should have sent them from Oregon. She should have sent them to you, Dennis, and then you could have forwarded them on. They'd have got there quicker. Move on, Neil. You're getting dangerously close to politics and talking about strikes and stuff. Yeah, we don't want to do that, do we? That's not what this show's about. This show's about making pictures. Getting your feet wet in the puddles. Honestly, I've done it twice now. While you were listening to Mark Littlejohn, the left boot went into a puddle. It's absolute. I might as well just take the sock off. Maybe I'll do that.
Rainy days. On a rainy day. On a rainy day. On a rainy day.
that my sock a moment ago meant that I forgot to say, the most important thing that I forgot to say was that I will pop up a picture of what Dennis sent. So you get this idea of this, I suppose it's a project, sending out, well, it will be, wouldn't it? Postcards to people and perhaps leaving them in places as well. It's a lovely idea. A way of sharing, a way of distributing your art. I think that would be a joy, wouldn't it, to find pictures that have been made by an artist or a photographer, especially if you're browsing books in the library or a bookstore and you find it as a surprise bookmark. A lovely idea indeed. Last week, the first of the monthly assignments was launched, and I can now reveal that the new page is built. It's done for the assignments in 2023. So if you want to read what this month's is, if you missed last week's show, you just want to remind yourself perhaps, then you can go, the page is up, you can go to photowalk.show. There's a features tab now, a photo features tab, and within that tab there's all the different features that we have, like the photo essays and the assignments. It's there. So that's where the pictures that you send in will appear when you've joined in with this month's assignment. As I say, there's a prize. Am I selling this well enough? The famous, not so famous show flask for the project that's raised my eyebrows, because it is a project that you're being asked to do in January. Not so many weeks to go, so please put some thoughts into it. It is, I'd say it's a more challenging assignment than the many that we've had, but good luck. Fare thee well with it. Right. Oh, the wind's getting up. Can you hear that? Whoa, those canopies are shifting above me. If you'd like an inspirational idea for the year ahead, I think I've got one for you now. This is not a 365 as such, but it is an annual photo idea. One camera, one lens, 1 year. Okaloi. I mentioned this prior to Christmas, and I had Johan Otterdal Edfeldt on the show, and he's been doing his projects, one camera, one lens, 1 year projects for a few years now, and he's been making books on the back of it. So here's Johan, and I have to say I'm moved very much, having edited the interview now with him, to do this myself. One camera, one lens, 1 year. The X Pro 1 that I've got with me, I've got the Samyang 12mm on it at the moment, the wide angle, which is great for shooting, certainly shooting in the woods and the forests. But I think I'd like to put the vintage lens on, the 28mm Yashica lens that I was gifted by our good friend Tim Binder. I think I'd like to use that actually for the project. If I was going to do one camera, one lens, 1 year. I mean, you don't have to make a picture every single day. It can be something that you might spend a month making lots of pictures and then leave it for a month or so. So I think it's a fantastic project. And here's Johan talking about it.
So in the last knockings of 22, I read out a letter where you talked about one camera, one lens, 1 year. Okaloi. Yeah. It's a project that really, and you probably gathered it by the way I talked about it on the program at the time, but it really grabbed my imagination. It's a does what it says on the tin project. One camera, same lens, 365 days, maybe Jan 1st to December 31st, or in your case, it's Valentine's Day to Valentine's Day. And maybe there's something about that date you want to share with me, but it doesn't mean you don't shoot with anything else at all during the year, does it? It just means that there is one setup that is dedicated to this project.
Yeah, so I bought a XE1 camera. I got it for like €100, which was really cheap.
Yeah, nothing.
The guy said the camera is too slow. It's horrible, and he didn't want it. So I got 5 batteries, a camera case, and the camera for €100, wow. Which was great. It was hardly used. It was amazing. And then I came up with an idea to let's see what's possible with this camera. And then I went to a secondhand store, and I found a Konica Hexanon 40mm 1.8, and I bought a lens adapter. So I spent €50 more, so €150 in total. And then I just decided this is going to be my one camera, one lens for 1 year. And let's see if the lens was only like €20. If a €20 lens and a 10-year-old camera can take good photos and how I can develop through that. And I think we're all on our own photographic journey, and this was my journey. That year completely changed my way of taking pictures in so many ways.
So why the February the 14th date attached to this? I know you're a romantic traveling old soul, you.
It's got nothing to do with romance, actually. It was I got the adapter for the Konica the day before, so
right.
it was the first day I could actually use the gear.
Complete coincidence then.
Yeah, and then that day was a really nice. The first day it was like snowy, and me and my wife went on a long hike, and it was a great day for taking pictures and trying to learn the new old kit.
And work in a much more restricted fashion. What did that teach you?
Like try to explain to a lot of photographers over the year how cool this project is for everyone. If you're a beginner or a professional, it just changes everything. So I was just a big dreamer with thousands of ideas, and after 2 weeks I've taken all the photos I wanted and I realized I have 50 more weeks to go, and that's when the journey began. That's when I really was taking pictures I never took before. And to make it more interesting, I did in May I only shot in black and white. In June I only shot pictures where there's no people in the frame. In July I only shot pictures with people in the frame. And so I had a project within the project for every month as well.
So you kind of issued assignments to yourself in some respect.
Yeah, it was assignments every month.
Yeah.
Within the Okoloi project.
But you didn't, I mean, in terms of the amount of pictures you took, it wasn't a 365, was it? You didn't attach this, well, I have to do one with this camera every single day.
No, but it was probably 200 pictures a day, 365. It's all over, it's just like my brain. It's like photos everywhere. I have no idea what date I took them, or for me, a good photo is a good photo, and I don't even have my camera settings on time or anything like that.
It did feel, I mean, for me, I have the X Pro 1, which I talk about on the show, and I've got a newish 12mm. It's not that new, and a much older Yashica 28mm vintage lens. Yeah. And I was thinking figuratively I could glue it on for the year and do my own Okoloi, because I think I could see it as kind of like a 52 project. I'm not like you. I don't take 200 pictures every single day.
Yeah.
But I think those sort of projects that we give ourselves can be quite important, can't they, to drive our photography forward?
Yeah, I think that one of the main things with photography is to do assignments and get yourself out there to make it more interesting.
Johan Otterdal-Edfeldt, thank you. I think by now Johan should be in New Zealand. I must check in and see where he is, because he has his adventure in New Zealand each year now, in the van, travelling across the country, playing music, surfing, making photographs. Oh, does that sound like a nice idea, or what? But yes, if you're going to join in with Okoloi, then like the 365 project that we talked about together a moment ago, I'd be very intrigued to get pictures as you move through the year with that project as well.
For quality used and inspected photo and video kit with a 6-month guarantee upon what you buy, visit mpb.com.
During the year, as I mentioned last week on the show, hang on, trying to get up a muddy bank with, I'm caked in mud now. I've not got a lot of grip. Here we go. Oh, we're there. Yes, I mentioned that I'm going to do some test drives with MPB, take some different cameras out, and have a go with the kit that you use, because I do rather champion a couple of cameras for these walks. The X100V, my Fujifilm X100V, which I love, and the X Pro 1 with one or other lens, really. Either the 28mm that I was mentioning a moment ago. Here's one of those. Here's one of those mounds that I was mentioning, or the 28mm or the 12mm. Just to finish that sentence, yeah, one of these mounds that used to house munitions. This is fascinating, because this one, I'm not sure if I'll be able to. How will I be able to show the whole mound, get an idea of the fact that this is a mound? There's a tree growing right out of it. Let's have a go. We'll do it in portrait. I'm going to shoot f8. In fact, no, I'll move to 1/2/5 because I'm not terrifically steady when I'm trying to balance everything in my hands here. Let's have a look. Oh, beautiful greens today because this lushness of the rain. That's the good thing about the rain. Let's get one more. Yeah. Whether you'll be able to recognise that's a mound, but the tree's growing out of it. We'll see what it looks like when we get home in the dry with a cup of char. If you'd like to send in your pictures, then I'd love to receive them. This show is built very much on it is completely built on your letters and the photographs that you send in, the pictures that you share of where you are in the world. It's the geographic journal of your pictures that I so enjoy looking at, opening up and poring over. So please send them in. The email address is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. It's lovely to hear from those that regularly contact the show. It feels like a real community when I hear from you, and it's equally lovely to hear from those who've never contacted the program before. Absolute joy. So and don't, as I said before, don't worry that your pictures might be, I don't know, like mine, sketchbooky, just sort of memories, nothing that's necessarily going to sell in the black and white coffee gallery, but just something that just shows where you are in the world, because we have photographers all around the world listening to this program, and sometimes I have to pinch myself. When I went into radio years ago, it would have been local radio. Well, first of all, it was hospital radio, which I don't think is a feature all around the world, which was literally radio piped into a hospital from essentially a studio next door or within the hospital grounds. And you'd get, 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 listeners. If I could have told myself then, one day you're going to be making a program that goes all around the world and you're going to make friends with photographers that send pictures, that share where they are and share sometimes very intimate personal feelings about how they're getting on in life, I wouldn't have believed you. But so your pictures from around the world, an absolute, and I mean this genuinely, I'm sure you can tell, privilege to receive. Right, let's have a letter, shall we? Did I say the email address? I'll do it again. Stories@photowalk.show. 2,000 pixels wide with the pictures, if you can size them accordingly, but don't worry if you can't. I'll do it for you. Right, a letter, and look who it's from. He's dodged the snakes for another week or so he has. It's Bob of the Desert, or as I noted it down here, Bob of the Dessert. Bob, are you making photos in Jello? No, Bob of the Desert, Bob Demers. Happy New Year, Neil. You can still say Happy New Year. We've established that you can do that all the way into February, haven't we? Happy New Year to you as well. Beautiful final show of 22, he says, particularly the montage of clips from your guests at the end. It made me a bit weepy, but in a good way. Bob, has that Arizona dust, has it got to your eyes? Looking forward to a new year of the photo walk, and please don't shorten it too much, he says. The length is perfect for tucking into whilst working on a batch of pictures in Lightroom. I used to listen to Van Halen's 1984 album, a good length to get some serious colour grading done, but the photo walk has supplanted that. I read actually, Bob, that there was possibly going to be a kind of a get-together tribute to Eddie Van Halen's life. And I think his son, now this is going to have to be a memory moment. Is it Wolfgang Van Halen? I'm pretty sure it is. He's a terrific musician, and I think he was possibly going to play in that. But there's a bit of, there's a bit of toing and froing going on. But what a concert that would be, eh? 22, says Bob, was a bit iffy in our household. Medical, work issues, each alone not so daunting, but together conspired to disrupt plans. So I'm not so sad to see 22 go. The best part, however, besides discovering the photo walk, rescued yourself there, was the move to our new tiny home in the Tucson foothills, 500 square feet and growing. It's been enlightening to learn how little space we need to live
And like your locale, our outdoors is an extension of our living room and virtually adds to the square footage. Attached, you'll find some pictures from my first photo walk on Sentinel Peak in Tucson, literally just across the street. Due to be part now of my daily health regime, it's got a steady climb to a plateau between the peak and an abandoned quarry. The basalt rock removed, now holding up hundreds of historic homes in Tucson. A forest of scrub. Now, I'm going to have to work with this. Palo Verde and elkhorn cholla covers the rocky desert floor, punctuated by patches of prickly pear cactus and the tiny... Here we go. I practiced this. I did over breakfast. See, I could actually just edit this on and sound all sorted on the pronunciation, but I'm not. I'm gonna struggle through it. Mammillaria. There we go. Mammillaria Mammillaria grahami. There we go. Mammillaria grahami cactus. Translate, he says, if you dare. Well, I can't even say the word. I can't even say the cactus name at the moment, but I did translate it. It's also known, and this is much easier to say, as Graham's nipple. Titters all round. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be that piece of Graham's anatomy if I bumped into this cactus. Look at it. 1001 sharpened dentist's probes in the hands of that demon dentist from Little Shop of Horrors. Played brilliantly, wasn't it, by Steve Martin? Fantastic. These cacti and other bushes grow between the lava flow. What a rich place to photograph that you have on your doorstep. Avoiding the caliche, which is a calcium carbonate deposit common in these arid parts, known as nature's cement. It forms an impermeable crust just below the surface that can often appear on the surface looking a lot like plaster of Paris. Blimey, Bob. It's like it's like reading a letter from David Attenborough, reading your mail here. Do you get Attenborough in USA land, or is that a bit like you asking if I get chicken nuggets in the UK? David Attenborough, absolute national treasure. I think he's our best export. I'd put him up there with Rolls-Royce, if it weren't for the fact that Rolls-Royce was bought by BMW. You're not buying Attenborough, I tell you what. No way. Attenborough is not for sale. And finally, a picture of a mallee's tree, says Bob. But really it's a 3-foot creosote bush on the rim of the quarry. It actually looks like a huge tree, but it's only 3 foot high, as you say. But and smells, says Bob, of creosote, which must be really weird. Creosote for me is, that's the smell of my childhood, that is. Steady on, Neil. What were you doing with your childhood? No, every summer was heralded. The start of summer, anyway, or spring perhaps, was heralded when the rains subsided by Dad getting out into the garden with a great big, huge tin of creosote and creosoting the fence every single year. There's more creosote than fence, I think, by the time we moved out of that house. But I love the images. Thank you, Bob, very much. I'll put them on the show page, of course. But these are truly a gallery, not simply a postcard, but a gallery of where you live. And as I said before, that's just the sort of thing that I love to receive. So I'm looking forward to the galleries of where you live, and my other listener lives in this world. Right, inspiration. Stand by for what in our house we refer to, because we were talking, of course, about thorns. It's a very important word to remember now. So stand by for what in our house we refer to as a Badger News cliche. Badger News is where, for some reason, local television news writers, they have to pun, don't they, all the time. It's like Jeff the news anchor, who's transitioning from a story about, say, a lion called Oscar that's escaped from the local wildlife park into the weather. And the script would go something like, well, if Oscar's bite doesn't get you, maybe the bite of the easterly wind and the snow in the air tonight will. See what I mean? That's a Badger's news cliche, or a Badger News cliche. And why Badger? Well, there's always an and finally that involves an animal, and for some reason, badgers seem to make the news quite a lot,
down our way anyway. So, so here comes the Badger News pun. From the thousands of thorns of Bob's Mountain in Tucson to an altogether more pleasant thorn, the photographer, Madison Thorne. Ha! Can you see what I did? 23 hours drive east is Madison on I-40 to Nashville from Tucson. We're going to go to Madison for some inspiration. Here she is from episode 277. We talked about this this powerful project that she'd made. Well, I say wonderful, I mean the subject matter was really serious, but it was truly a terrific project that she did. Very personal project about people having to shield from that virus I just don't like to mention. But actually, this clip I really, really love from that show, episode 277, where we talked about her project, because right near the end, it's about a minute long. You can hear in this clip I'm about to play, which is about who inspired you as a photographer. You can absolutely hear the love that Madison has for the person that she's talking about. It's a clear, very clear, palpable love for the person who photographically inspired her most.
I have had so many photographers that have been inspirational to me along my path. Ones from St. Louis that, pointed me in the right direction. Current ones that have been in Nashville for years and years, like Stacey Huckabee and Jim Harrington, and they are very well established, yet they are willing to speak to me and discuss photography and, give me tips. But upon thinking upon that question, I want to say my grandmother, because I remember at a very young age, not necessarily telling me how to take a picture, but why we compose a photo the way we do. I remember her telling me about the rule of thirds. And she didn't say the rule of thirds. She said, do you see the way this person sits on this side of the frame and how there's all this open space and you give them room to move within the frame? And that I'll always treasure, those conversations with her.
That's Madison Thorne. So lucky. I feel so appreciative of the fact that I get to talk to these incredible photographers. Famous, not so famous, some full-time, some not full-time at all, some just doing it because they love doing it. It's a joy. It truly is. Right, part 2 of my conversation with a very much loved Mark Littlejohn, landscape photographer, former detective for 30 years, who found his love for picture making as a next door neighbour to some of the most beautiful parts of the UK, the Lake District in particular. And you heard him mention Ullswater. Ullswater is a stretch of, it's one of the lakes that's with the paddle steamers on it. Honestly, it's fantastic. But Mark found this photographic processing style. Actually, his pictures, of course, are beautiful, but this processing style that he has, it's split toning, and he sent me some split tone presets to try it, as I mentioned earlier on, and they really do need. Today's a very blur kind of nothingy, greyy, blur sky. So you really do need a bit more contrast for I think these presets to absolutely sing. But I'll have a go with them. I'll see what they look like with the sketchbook images that I've made today. Although I've got the earthy tone too, I've got some beautiful greens, and I hope that they may do my pictures justice. Well, I hope anyway. But Mark talks about his processing style. I know we don't always get technical, but it is such an important part of his work, and the sort of the warmth that you feel when you look at Mark's work. There's a very ethereal feeling to his work, and I love that about his pictures. So here's part 2 of my conversation with the landscape photographer Mark Littlejohn.
Well, let's talk about something you're very well known for, that you champion: split toning. Hand on heart, I'm going to say, I've worked in this industry now for 2 decades. I don't think I've ever split toned a photograph. But it's the very backbone of your approach to processing, isn't it?
It is. It's probably the only approach. And I've no idea why it came about. I think possibly because I was examining it again the other day. 2012. I think I played with one or two of Lightroom's presets, but 2012, my daughter's horse was being shod. Blacksmith had the old traditional approach. It was just in the open part of the stables, so there was natural light coming in, darkness behind.
Yeah.
And it was just, you can smell the flesh burning as he sears it, and everything else. Smoke's rising off the hoof. And I suppose it was looking at the picture afterwards and liking the picture, but then thinking, I'd like a bit more of the smell-o-vision sort of a thing, scratch and sniff sort of thing. So I started playing with the split tones as opposed to using the preset one that Lightroom supplied. And I really liked the result. And I thought, okay, let's try this a little bit more. So I spent a while doing that. Rachel would be on half nights. So I'd sit in front of the computer with a glass of Rioja or something just to chill. Never bothered reading any books or any learning material on how to do it. It was just a case of let's have a wee sip of wine and let's have a wee play with the dials and let's just have a look at the result. Let's not think about too much about the techniques and what we're trying to achieve. Let's look at the picture as we process it. And if we like the result and we're not introducing artifacts, great.
And you now save them as presets. In fact, one of the presets is named after one of your cats. I have to say, by the way, Ronnie and Reggie, for those that, of course, know the infamous Cray twins, there's a slight bit of dark humour to the name of your presets, particularly being a former copper.
Well, that was Rach. She always wanted two brothers, two cats.
Right.
And she always wanted to call them Reggie and Ronnie.
Oh, right. It was Rachel.
And if one would have it, they are big cats, very big cats. Now, Ronnie is the big, gormless muscle, if you might think, and Reggie is the master criminal, and he is. They're quite distinct, for brothers, they're quite distinct characters, but it's really funny how they played out as Ronnie and Reggie.
And they formed the name, or is it Ronnie that you've named for one of your presets?
Yeah, I did a picture of Ronnie in the bedroom, last light coming in through Lighting Him Up.
That's right, yeah.
And I called it Ron, which was the same preset that I used for the shot that won the Landscape Photographer of the Year in 2014.
So is it true that you come in from a shoot and essentially you just rotate through some of the presets that you've made and find one that suits the image? Because it sounds to me quite a sort of a very quick way of processing.
It's not really a case of rotating through. There'll be a couple in my mind, depending on the colours in the shot. So sometimes if it's a morning backlit type shot, then it's maybe a blue shadows and ale highlights. If it's an autumnal one with one of the mountains, it's maybe a more richy, earthy one. So I'll have two or three that are quite similar, but it's really getting a start for 10. I'll look at a preset and it's not simply a case of I've hit the preset and that's it. A preset will be like, that's the way I'm going. Because at the end of the day, I think that approach came from, obviously, if I was trying to relax from doing the computer forensics, I never wanted to spend too long processing because there's no way to chill from doing a computer-based job by sitting at a computer for hours. But no, I look at it very much as a start for 10. Sometimes I'll look at 3 or 4 and think, nah, and I'll just start from scratch and I'll go through. And usually, if I've started on an image from scratch and I like the result, then I'll save that as a preset.
Well, there's certainly a very warm feeling I get from your work, very earthy colours.
Yeah, there's no overriding aim to the process as a whole. I've done a talk this year in 2 or 3 places that have been about romance. So I suppose, in a way, I think reality is a little bit overrated, and I certainly wouldn't describe myself as a faithful servant of the truth. I tend to look at artists, or I have done. I mean, I've looked at so many artists in the past, Hudson River School, British landscape artists like Claire Haley and James Norton and people like that. I look at their work and I love the atmosphere and the warmth of the colours and just the mood and the atmosphere. So really, I suppose a lot of the time with the split toning, it's a case of trying to recreate as I saw it in my mind's eye. Yeah. And it might be that I'm just a closet romanticist and I love period dramas and the feel of the old paintings. And I'm just trying to recreate that. You could say I'm a failed painter.
Oh, I wouldn't say that at all. But there is definitely a romanticism in terms of the painterly feel to them. And I don't think you mind being described as having a painterly feel, do you?
No, they look painterly. I don't do a massive amount in relation to standard processing, if you like. I don't dodge and burn. I don't work in a lot of layers. but I do play with the colours. I play a little bit with the light and dark, but then again, the light and dark is going to be present in the scene to probably attract my eye in the first place. So there's got to be a starter for 10. I can't just go out in flat light and take a picture. I can maybe go out and practice. I can maybe go out and just, learn my trade. No days ever wasted. But for me to get an image that makes me sit back and go, like that, then there's got to have been something wondrous happening at the time.
I'm very much buoyed by the attitude that you have, and the more I've gotten to know your work and read about you and read through your Twitter feed and Instagram, this idea that you don't have to go out, be anchored to a spot and take hours. Not denigrating those that do, because I've spoken to a few that do work that particular way, but to enjoy being out in that landscape and be a part of it without having to think too much about it is certainly a great driver for me, having watched and looked at your work.
There's no right or wrong way to do things. I mean, people go about, black and white and everything else. And the world is just a huge grey area. And I think my time in the CID has taught me that. Yeah. I think sometimes it's easy for me because I'm always out and about. I'm not trying to achieve anything. I'm more to relax when I go out. You will find some people, for example, there's a guy who comes on the tours. I would say, right, we're going to meet downstairs at 5 a.m. As long as that's not too early for everybody, but 5 a.m. we're going to have to meet that time so we can get out to where we want to go. And he'd be up at 3:30 doing his emails for work. So he'd be out for an hour and a half. He'd be up for an hour and a half before I came downstairs. But then you would get somewhere and he'd set up the tripod and he'd sit there and he would chill and he would relax, and that would help to get him his connection with the land. I already had that connection with the land, so I can't tell him to just wander around because he's never going to relax into it. So everybody's different and everybody has to have their own approach. I'll never tell anybody not to use a tripod if they enjoy using a tripod. If that's what it takes to slow them down, to get that enjoyment, then we're all different, and we have to rejoice in the fact that we're different, and we have to rejoice in our own individuality and our own uniqueness. And that's the whole point about taking the pictures. And that's, I suppose, one of the things that I say, you only have to please yourself. You can't take other people's pictures. You can only take your own.
Now, tell me about the tours. That was a question I had toward the end of our conversation, but since you mentioned them, seems a good opportunity. Red's there with you always, isn't he? Red's a faithful companion upon these
yeah, well,
tours.
He doesn't come on the tours. But,
does he not? I thought he was on the tours.
People ask about him. It's like, no, you're not having a bloody mental boxer coming in and being a nuisance. So he doesn't come.
Oh.
But I mean, my tours are 3 people and me, because you can all fit in my old Land Cruiser. I've had the same Land Cruiser for 12 years now. Book nice houses. I think next week I'm in Torridon. And start of February is another one in Torridon. And I like nice houses where people can relax.
Yeah.
I cook, whether it's like a mushroom risotto or macaroni cheese or whatever, or garlic chicken with mash. But it's nice to be able to sit in the kitchen, cook away, open a bottle of wine and talk photography. But it's just nice going out with 3 like-minded people, just having a chill, a relax, a little glass of something nice, and a discussion of all things photographic.
A wee dram at night, I'm sure. You mentioned the website as well, so I am intrigued by this decision to run your business. In terms of the digital gallery, if you want to call it that, not on a website necessarily, although you do have one, of course, but mainly through Insta and Twitter and Facebook. Why this decision to use Twitter, for starters?
It's, funny enough, Twitter, I've been a member of Twitter since 2009, and really only then because it was a case of you had to join everything when you were doing the computer forensics, so you had to have a look at the sites. But I didn't really use Twitter till I won the landscape photography year, and then I noticed a bit of, folk talking and whatever else. I started using it, and Twitter really has become more of I've just walked on the beach, so I've taken an iPhone shot or whatever, so it tends to be a lot of phone shots on Twitter, and it's just like life in Westeros, if you like. It's just a little journal as I go through, and it helps, again, obviously, if I have a cancellation of a tour or whatever else and I need to publicise it.
Do you know, I like that idea of Twitter being a journal, actually. I'd not thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's just a daily wander through life. Yeah. So the photographs don't have to be... It's funny, a pal said he quite liked the fact that I wasn't afraid to fail. And I never think about it as failing, because a photograph to me is just a photograph. So the photographs on Twitter, there can be 3 or 4 going in a day. If we've done an interesting walk, I'll put 3 or 4 up. They're not world-beating photographs. They're not anything you'd put in your wall, but it's just a nice day out. I think there was one a couple of days ago. My son, who's with us briefly before he goes to... He's going on a work visa to New Zealand in a month or 2. But we went up Scythian Moor, which is great views across the Bashford. So I took a couple of pictures on the way up. Light wasn't fabulous, but it was just a nice day out.
Yeah.
Pictures went on Twitter. There's not a lot of space to talk on Twitter, so it's just, as you say, a bit of a journal.
I like the way that you do also use it to champion other people's work. That's a real form of community, which I sense is quite important to you.
I think it's a great community.
Yeah.
One or two people have been saying, we're going to leave Twitter because of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
It's just a case I'll just bide me time until he's gone again. He's just like a naughty little boy who just happens to have a lot of money behind him. Yeah. But I'm not going to change the attitude. A lot of people quite enjoy seeing my work. Other people put their work in there a lot. I'm not going to leave. If he was doing something worse, I might leave. But it's quite a nice relation. As you say, if I see somebody else's work, then I'll share it. Retweet last night was Alex Neil.
Yeah, saw that one. Yeah.
He's got some calendars for sale that he's got left over that he's going to sell with all the proceeds going to the Dundonald Mountain Rescue. So that's a lovely gesture from Alex, because he's going to pay for the postage, so he's going to be significantly out of pocket. But he's doing that for the Mountain Rescue. So, yeah, I'll share things like that.
And I saw actually a friend of mine, Mally Davis, you've been on his podcast. I see you chuckling. I'm not quite sure why you're chuckling when I say that. But you featured one of his pictures. He did ask me to say, is he one of your favourites?
Oh, of course. Yes. Of course, Mally's the first person to look at in the morning.
Obviously.
As soon as you wake up in the morning, it's like, what's Mally been doing?
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that one. Everything is photographic candy box, isn't it, really? I mean, I saw a tweet from you prior to Christmas where you were studying the shapes in the sand, but everything really to you is of interest, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I like writing little spiels and things, so it'd be quite nice to have a blog.
Mm. But you do actually, you do that on your Facebook account though, don't you, really? Yeah. So travel must be a motivational factor for somebody in your position. Having said that, you tend to stay fairly close to home, and you do describe yourself as getting a bit homesick if you're away for too many days in a row.
Oh, definitely. Miss me, missus, cats and dog. I did get invited to run a tour abroad this year, but that's gone, which I'm quite pleased about in a way, because I always do tours close to home. I'm doing one in the lakes in September, just arranged, but everything else is here. They're all in the Highlands. I think it's really important to photograph close to home. It's, you talk about, people travel miles and miles on a daily basis taking photographs, and I suppose grew up photographically, sailing around Ullswater 3 times a day.
Which is beautiful.
Taking photographs of the same thing, but of course every day the light's different time of day, different time of season, different direction, and it really brings it home to you how the light changes what you're looking at.
Books. I feel I should ask this question more often. I did last week, and I should this week. I'm going to this week, rather. What's the most recent photo book? I know you bought Simon Baxter's Gathering Time, which is just behind me as well. Love that book. Love that book. What's the most recent one you've bought?
Most recent one I've bought would be Finn Hobson's.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. I absolutely love it. I mean, obviously, I've got Gathering Time. I buy quite a few each year. I'm probably going to buy Harold Heltman's in the next week or so.
Tell me about that one.
It's basically Harold, a Scandinavian photographer, takes most magnificent photographs in the Lofotens and all over the place. But he's got a photo book basically of his backyard, and it's just small images. It's not the big be-all and end-all. I really like the look of it. It was reviewed recently in On Landscape, and I just love the look and the feel. So I'll probably go for that.
Doesn't that
I do like buying books as a way of supporting other photographers as well, if you like. I mean, I love seeing different books. I keep on thinking, I look at different books and think, yeah, I like that, because I'm still sort of very slowly writing one myself.
Well, that was going to be my next question. When is the book?
Oh, God.
Because I saw an interview with you, it would have been 2017, and you were promising one then.
Yeah, I was going to do one on Ullswater, but then 2017 was a strange sort of year with age and everything else. And then I sort of went off that idea, and then I quite like, there's a guy, Fabi Pennick, American golf coach, who's dead now. But he'd been a golf coach for decades at University of Texas, I think. Right. And amongst the people he coached was Tom Kite and Ben Crenshaw. So 2 totally different golfers, but each won majors. Each was, I think, Ryder Cup captain. But obviously it's returning slightly to the fact that everybody's different. So he coached these 2 guys in totally different ways. And he had just little sayings, little thoughts, little ideas that went through his head. And he wrote them all down. So he had this, and his son said before he died, "You need to make this into a book." So he came out with Harvey Pennock's little red book. And it was just basically thoughts and processes.
Fantastic.
And that's the sort of thing that I'm working towards at the moment. That was in my head. I thought, because I say all these little things like, see with a heart, shoot with a head. There's all sorts of little bits that reminds to me, if you like. So that's the idea, and that's what I'm working towards. The problem is, if you've read any of my spiels on Facebook, you know that I can't, it takes me 100 words to say 10. So, the introduction is like, Jesus, Mark, you're up to like page 279 of the introduction. You need to sort of like shut this down a little bit.
It's just going to be a big book, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Has the attention mark surprised you? I mean, you're no stranger to awards and commendations, and you're asked to speak, and photographers reach out for advice, you mentor. In 2010, when you bought that camera, what was the camera, by the way, before I ask this question? What was that?
It was the Pentax. It was a Pentax KX.
Right.
It was a little 12 megapixel APS-C.
Oh, so you're very much in the Bill Ward mold then.
Well, I only moved from Pentax because they weren't doing a full frame camera, and I wanted a full frame camera. The glass was fantastic. I had about 7 or 8 gorgeous prime lenses. The glass was brilliant, but the camera just didn't sort of keep pace.
But in 2010, when you bought that Pentax then, I would imagine none of this was in your plans.
Oh, God, no.
Has it surprised you? What do you think?
Well, it's weird, to be perfectly honest, because I just do my own thing, if you like. I've really enjoyed as much as anything the response to when I do the spiels on Facebook that I should just copy across on Instagram. So the response, to think that, I write articles. I mean, it's like 30 or 1,000 folk on Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's 60,000 or so on Instagram. It's like a bit weird for like bog standard ex-detective who just sort of like, grumpy and just takes pictures of what he sees. I'm not arguing, but it is, intriguing.
Mark Littlejohn, a joy to talk with him, and I'll share, of course, pictures from Mark on the show page today and link to his various socials and also his website. He runs photo events, as he talked about, so if you want to reach out to him, I'm sure he'd be delighted to hear from you. So for links to Mark and Johan and the other photographers that you've heard about or from today, go to today's show page, which will be episode 364 on photowalk.show, or follow the link that's in the podcast player app. I look forward to hearing from you. The email address is stories. I just paused there because, again, I found a building. Well, it would have been a building, but now it's just the base of it with trees have taken over. Let's get a sketchbook of this one. Oh, look at this. Look at the lichen. Just put your letters down there. Look at the lichen here. Look at the lichen on that. Right. That's, where are we? Oh, I'm going to need to open up my aperture a bit deeper into the woods. 60th, f5.6. What are we doing with focus? Here we go. Let's get a little bit closer. There we go. Sketchbooking my way through the woods. The rains have started again, actually. I'm going to try and get back to... I appear to be a bit lost. I am a little bit lost. Where on earth am I? Send out a search party. Otherwise, there won't be an episode with Alice next week. I'll play you more from my special guest, who is Alice Tomlinson, next week in a short while. But we'll have our play-out song, first of all, which is... I like this song a lot, actually. It's Royal Nature, with a song called I Followed Fallen Leaves. For those that are joining the show for the first time, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we always end with a song on this particular show, which is a bit unusual, I know, for a photography podcast, but I see it as a kind of a closing few moments with you as we make a few more photographs together. So share those photographs, please. I'd love to hear from you and see the pictures that you've been making. And we'll play this song in a second. This week's postscript, which is, it's usually, well, it can be oh, look, that's beautiful. Can you hear? Neil, you're digressing a bit. I know, it's the end of the show. I'm digressing, and it's raining on me, and I should really be trying to find Carl. Ah, the bird song, beautiful. Yes, the PS at the end of the show can be lines from a poem. It can be some thoughts from photographers. Sometimes just inspirational thoughts that aren't necessarily photographic at all. But today, I am leaning on Mark Littlejohn. I thought that would make sense, really, because as he says, he's thinking about a book release that would have his thoughts next to the pictures that he makes. So here's one. It's a kind of a blink and you'll miss, but I like it. A thought from Mark Littlejohn, a PS to end the show. Pertinent and pithy, this one.
You don't need to show everybody everything all the time.
I almost count all the days. Wooden trails brought me to this place. For many moons I've been searching for myself. Now what path will I take?
I followed fallen leaves from Royal Nature. Wonderful. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Mark Littlejohn, to Johan Otterdal-Etfeldt as well. The Extra Mile is out. And a reminder that this week we're shooting the breeze with podcaster, artist, just all-round really clever bloke, Jeffrey Sadoris. And I have more from Ruben Radding. So go across now to hear that. Or, of course, you could save it up and walk with me a little bit more at the weekend. Next week, Alice Tomlinson is my guest. We talk projects, life, language, art, wonderful strangers, nuns in far-off lands, Italian islands, awards, there's all kinds of things with Alice Tomlinson.
About 7 or 8 years ago, I made a very conscious decision, which meant it impacted me kind of financially, personally, psychologically, if you like, to step away from commercial work and to really invest on kind of many levels in my personal work and on long-term research-based projects. But that was a decision that I made very kind of firmly, because up until that point, I'd always dabbled in personal projects, and I've got many still on my website, but I never really gave them the time or space.
And final virtual fist bumps go to Neil Ford, head of Stuff That Only Works, after he's given it a reboot. Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group. Andrea Gilpin, Chief of Staff on the Instagram Vero and Ideas floor. To Artlist and to Epidemic for the music. And I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.